In this episode, we are going to bring together one of the most important beginner ideas in security, and that is the idea that protection does not happen in only one place. New learners sometimes picture security as a password on a screen or an antivirus icon in the corner of a computer, but real protection is much broader than that. A system is safer when the building, the device, the account, and the rules around access all support each other. That is why technicians need to understand physical controls, logical controls, and identity controls as parts of one bigger picture instead of as three unrelated topics. Once you see how those categories work together, security becomes easier to understand because you stop asking which single control will fix everything and start asking how several controls can work together to reduce risk in a more realistic way. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good place to begin is with the idea of a control. A control is simply something put in place to reduce the chance of loss, misuse, damage, or unauthorized access. Some controls are visible and easy to picture, like a locked door or a badge reader. Some are built into software, like permissions, account restrictions, or rules that decide which devices can connect to a network. Others focus on identity, which means proving that a person really is who they claim to be before the system trusts them. Beginners often hear these categories as if they belong to separate lessons, but in real support work, they overlap constantly. A technician helping with a laptop, a user account, or a shared office space is often dealing with all three categories at once, whether they realize it or not. Physical access controls are usually the easiest to picture because they protect real spaces, real devices, and real people. These controls try to stop the wrong person from reaching equipment, entering sensitive areas, or removing something they should not touch. Doors, locks, fences, cameras, alarms, security guards, badges, cable locks, and equipment cabinets all belong in this category. Even something as simple as placing a printer in a supervised area instead of a public hallway can be a physical control because it changes who can touch printed documents. A beginner should think of physical controls as the first layer that protects the actual environment where technology lives. If someone can walk up to a machine, unplug it, steal it, swap it, or read what is left on the screen, then many software protections may matter less than people hoped. Physical controls matter because computers do not exist in empty space. They sit in classrooms, offices, reception areas, server rooms, homes, labs, and public spaces, and those places all create different risks. A desktop in a locked office is facing a different kind of threat than a laptop on a cafe table or a kiosk in a busy lobby. If a device is left unattended in a place where anyone can reach it, the risk changes immediately. Someone may not need to defeat a password if they can simply steal the whole machine or walk away with a printed document. This is why physical security is not only the job of building staff or security guards. It is part of technical support thinking. A technician who understands where the device lives will make better decisions about locks, screen privacy, cable security, and how much trust the environment really deserves. Logical controls are different because they live in the software and system behavior rather than in doors, desks, or buildings. These are the rules the system uses to decide what can happen and what cannot happen. Passwords, account permissions, firewalls, encryption settings, screen lock timeouts, application restrictions, update rules, and security policies are all examples of logical controls. If physical controls protect the place and the device, logical controls protect how the system behaves once someone tries to use it. Beginners should think of logical controls as the software side of protection. They do not stop someone from walking into a room, but they can stop that person from opening files, changing settings, installing software, or moving through the network in ways they should not be allowed to do. Logical controls are very important because trust should not depend only on location. A person sitting in the right office is not automatically allowed to do everything on every machine. A device connected to the right network is not automatically safe to use without rules. This is where permissions, restrictions, and default settings begin to matter. A user may be allowed to sign in but not install software. A guest may be allowed to use a shared kiosk, but not access stored company files. A remote worker may be allowed into email and shared documents, but blocked from sensitive systems that require stronger verification. These examples all show the same idea. Logical controls shape what the system allows after someone reaches it. They give the device a set of rules so that being present is not the same thing as being fully trusted. Identity controls focus on proving who a person is before access is granted, and this is where many beginners first picture security because sign-in screens are so familiar. Identity security is about making sure the system can tell the difference between an authorized user and someone pretending to be that person. Usernames, passwords, badge-based sign-in, smart cards, biometric checks, and multi-factor authentication, MFA, all belong in this area. The main beginner lesson is that identity is not just a login box. It is the trust decision that happens before the system gives someone access to data, applications, or shared resources. If that trust decision is weak, then many later controls are under pressure because the wrong person may already look legitimate to the system. Identity controls matter so much because modern systems are built around accounts. Email, cloud tools, file sharing, printers, help desk systems, mobile devices, remote access, and business applications all depend on identity. That means a stolen or misused account can create wide damage very quickly. If an attacker gets into one user's email, that may already be serious. But if the same account also unlocks shared files, messaging tools, remote meetings, and sign on to other systems, the problem gets bigger fast. This is why strong identity controls are not just for large companies. Even a small office or a home environment can suffer real harm if people reuse weak passwords, share accounts, or leave devices signed in where anyone can continue working as them. Beginners should understand that identity is often the bridge between the person and everything the system trusts that person to reach. One of the most useful beginner ideas is that these three categories protect different moments in the same overall process. Physical controls help decide who can reach the environment and the device. Identity controls help decide who the person claims to be. Logical controls help decide what that identified person is allowed to do after access begins. Seeing it that way makes the categories feel much more connected. Imagine someone walking into an office, opening a laptop, and trying to reach company files. The building badge is a physical control. The sign-in process on the laptop is an identity control. The file permissions and system restrictions are logical controls. None of those alone tells the whole security story, but together they create a stronger and more realistic defense than any one of them would by itself. This is also why security works best in layers. If one control fails, another control should still slow down the problem or limit the damage. A lost laptop is a good example. The physical control failed because the device left the trusted space, but the story is not over. If the laptop has a strong sign-in requirement, storage encryption, and a short screen timeout, then logical and identity controls still matter. The thief now has the hardware, but may not be able to use the data. The same idea works in the other direction. A strong password helps, but if a device is left unlocked in a public place, someone nearby may never need to know the password at all. Beginners get much better at security once they stop looking for a perfect single control and start expecting several controls to cover each other's weaknesses. A common beginner mistake is to think of physical controls as old-fashioned and software controls as modern, as if software somehow replaced the need to protect real places and real equipment. That is not true at all. A server room still matters. A locked office still matters. A privacy screen still matters. A visitor policy still matters. A printed page left on a shared printer still matters. Physical access can change the whole game because someone standing in front of the equipment may gain options that remote attackers do not have. They may reboot a device, remove storage, plug in unauthorized hardware, or simply read what is visible. Good technicians remember that physical security is not separate from technical security. It is the condition that often decides how much pressure the rest of the security controls will face. Another common mistake is to think that strong identity control alone solves everything. It is easy to believe that if users have good passwords and MFA, then the environment is well protected. Those are very important controls, but they are still only part of the picture. If users all share one generic account, identity becomes weak no matter how complex the password looks. If people stay signed in on shared machines, identity control becomes weaker in practice than it appears on paper. If permissions are too broad, a correctly identified user may still have far more access than they truly need. This is why identity security must connect to logical control. It is not enough to know who the person is. The system also needs to enforce what that person is allowed to reach, change, install, or delete. This leads to one of the most important practical ideas for beginners, which is the idea of least privilege. Least privilege means users should have only the access needed to do their work and not much more. This is a logical control, but it depends on identity working correctly because the system must know which user is asking. Least privilege helps reduce damage from mistakes, misuse, and stolen accounts. If one user only has access to the files and tools they actually need, then a compromised account has less power to cause harm across the environment. Beginners do not need to think of least privilege as a fancy policy phrase. It is simply a smart way to limit how much trust any one account receives. Combined with physical controls and stronger identity checks, it becomes one of the clearest ways to make a real environment safer without making it impossible for people to work. Technicians should also remember that users experience these controls together, not as separate textbook chapters. A user may complain that a badge does not open a door, their phone is needed for sign-in approval, and a shared folder still denies access after login. From the user's point of view, it all feels like one security problem. The technician should be able to sort that into layers. Is the person physically in the right place? Is their identity being recognized correctly? Are the logical permissions correct after identity has been confirmed? That kind of thinking makes support much faster and calmer. Instead of treating every access complaint as vague frustration, you begin placing it in the correct category while still remembering that the full experience depends on all three categories working together. A simple office example shows how connected these controls really are. Imagine an employee working in a building with locked entrances, badge readers, company laptops, shared printers, and cloud-based files. The front door badge reader is a physical control. The account sign-in on the laptop and the MFA prompt are identity controls. The company policy that prevents software installation, limits which folders can be opened, and locks the screen after inactivity is a set of logical controls. If one part is weak, the whole environment becomes weaker. If the badge is shared, physical security becomes weaker. If the account password is weak, identity security becomes weaker. If file permissions are too broad, logical security becomes weaker. But when all three are working together, the employee can still do their job while the environment remains far harder to misuse. By the end of this episode, the main lesson should feel clear and practical. Physical controls protect spaces, devices, and printed or visible information. Logical controls protect what systems allow people to do after access begins. Identity controls protect the trust decision about who the user really is. These are not three separate security worlds. They are three connected parts of one real security model. A locked door without account protection is not enough. A strong password without device control is not enough. Good permissions without trustworthy identity are not enough. Security gets stronger when physical, logical, and identity controls support each other in layers. That is the beginner mindset to keep. Do not ask which one matters most in every situation. Ask how they work together to protect the user, the device, and the organization in a way that makes real misuse harder and everyday work safer.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.